Ohio Congressman Mike Turner and Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Both congressmen will get a chance to question Mueller later this month because Congressman Turner being on the Intelligence Committee and Matt Gaetz, Congressman, being on the Judiciary Committee. So, gentlemen, thank you here. I want to set this up, though, first by going to Greg Jarrett. Greg, you've done as good a job as anybody I've seen documenting and laying out the conflicts of interest that lots of us from day one were concerned about with Director Mueller, but kind of run through these conflicts in the team that he assembled.
Well, the most egregious conflict of interest is that Mueller was meeting with President Trump the day before he took the job as special counsel. They were in the Oval Office. I talked to the president about it when I was in the Oval Office last week. And so I would ask this question, isn't it true, Mr. Mueller, that the president explained to you his reasons for firing James Comey that day? And the answer, I know, is yes, which means that Mueller was a witness in his own prosecution case. You can't be a prosecutor and a witness simultaneously. It's against the rules. It's also against ethical rules.
It never slowed him down before. It didn't slow him down in the Hillary Clinton investigation.
But he ignored it. The other major conflict of interest is the key witness in any obstruction case is James Comey. And James Comey and Robert Mueller are longtime friends, colleagues, and allies. Mueller was Comey's mentor. How is that fair to the president? Because Mueller's got to decide, am I going to believe Comey or the guy who fired my friend Comey? That's a major conflict of interest. He should have disqualified himself.
Congressman Gaetz, I want to go to you. You're on the Judiciary Committee. What kind of questions, what could you possibly get at? Mueller is a reluctant witness. He doesn't want to come. He was issued a subpoena, and he said that he's going to confine his report to what was issued in his report. So what do you think you can draw out from him?
Well, when Robert Mueller leaves Capitol Hill, I think the American people will see that there was no collusion and there was oceans of bias. I think bias will be the word of the day, from the assembly of the Mueller team to his handling and dealings with Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Let's remember that Robert Mueller had to fire those people from his team. But when I questioned Peter Strzok about his interactions with Mueller when he was fired, I was shocked at the lack of curiosity in Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller never asked what Peter Strzok meant by the insurance policy. He never delved into these secret meetings in Andrew McCabe's office where a lot of the actors that you lay out in your book, The Deep State, were assembling and engaging in their discourse and in their planning. And you also don't see any questions from Mueller to Strzok about what Peter Strzok meant when he said that there was no way that they would ever let Donald Trump become president. So if Mueller didn't have those questions for Strzok, we will certainly have those questions for Mueller.
Yeah, Congressman, you're exactly right, because it's at one point presented information by the Inspector General. Mueller dismisses these people because of bias. So where is that line of bias? He obviously thought there was some line at some point, but all these other examples are just as egregious, if not even more egregious. Now, Congressman Turner, one of the big questions I think I hear a lot when I'm out in the heartland talking to people is, when did Bob Mueller know? When did he actually find out and determine that there was no collusion? And why didn't he inform at least the Intelligence Committee, if not the public?
Well, Jason, you were hot on the trail of this when you were chairman of the Oversight Committee, and it goes really to the beginning of this investigation, because all of those, Brennan, Comey, Clapper, all testified, even at the inception of this, that they had no evidence of collusion. Certainly our committee, the Intelligence Committee, in issuing its report prior to the Mueller report, reviewed the evidence and also came to the same conclusion of that there was no evidence of collusion. And obviously Mueller's report does not conclude that the president committed a crime. But I think the president, well, Mueller only gets his authority from that delegated to him for the Attorney General of the Department of Justice, and no one in the Attorney General's office or the Department of Justice has the ability to exonerate anyone. It's disingenuous. It certainly shows his bias because he wants to leave the impression of the American public that his report impugns the president, even though he could find nothing that the president had done.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. And Greg, I want to ask you, there are a lot of things that Mueller didn't look at, that if you look at the instructions on what he was supposed to do, how did he exclude so many things?
How is it possible that you can investigate Russian interference in our election without examining the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC paying for Russian disinformation to then peddle to the media and the FBI to influence the campaign. And yet there's no mention in there of Christopher Steele's dossier or Hillary Clinton or Fusion GPS or Glenn Simpson or the actions of Comey and Clapper in spreading and peddling this false information to influence the election. So, you know, this was an entire whitewash of what should have been investigated by Robert Mueller.
Yeah, now, Congressman Gaetz, I was talking to Trey Gowdy earlier before we were on the air. You know, one of his observations was the one person they went out and got a FISA warrant against was Carter Page, and he's one person that was not indicted at all. So how do you get into, and it's hard with just 5 minutes, to Mueller and being able to look at what they did and did not do?
Well, it's important to remember that there was an FBI investigation of President Trump's interactions or his campaign's alleged interactions with Russia that predated Mueller. And even in that investigation, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page text to one another that there's no there there. There's no evidence. And so I think it is entirely appropriate to open those doors by asking about what evidence Robert Mueller and the Office of Special Counsel reviewed that might have been tainted or miscast as a result of its development by people who had a known bias against President Trump. And so I think that in looking at the work Mueller did in his report, we'll have to look at what were the inputs and what were the potential pollutants to those inputs regarding political bias. And frankly, I think that a lot of this was miscast and developed by people in the Obama White House, like Clapper, like Brennan. That's why the work of the Inspector General, as well as the work of Attorney General Barr, are so critical to make sure that we actually find out who was responsible for this terrible lie told to the American people for 2 years. So I'll be spending my 4th of July weekend rereading the Russia hoax, so I'm ready to use my 5 minutes well.
Very good. Now, Congressman Turner, I don't expect you to lay out the questions you're going to ask in advance, but you have a very important role. You've dedicated a big part of your career and time there in D.C. on the national intelligence front and on our military side. A little bit off topic, but very much related. There's an opportunity cost when the Intel Committee is so focused, as Adam Schiff does, on Russia, 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 but focusing on Donald, Donald, Donald. And explain to people the opportunity cost, because you have limited time and resources there at the committee, but what are the Congress not doing that they should be doing in the meantime?
Exactly. Well, Adam Schiff obviously will be in nirvana during all of this because this is what he's been pursuing the entire time. When he should be pursuing, instead of Donald Trump and his obsession with Donald Trump, is China, Iran, Russia, North Korea, real threats that we have to our country and how they're evolving. You know, what is China doing in hacking? What are threats to our infrastructure? What is our intelligence community doing with respect to assessing what Iran is doing with their nuclear weapons program? What are we seeing with Russia and their attempts to undermine democracies in Eastern Europe? All of these are areas that our staff should be spending time on, Adam Schiff should be spending time on, and our committee should be spending time on. It makes us less safe.
It's absolutely a point that I hope everybody digests and understands, that when Adam Schiff and the Democrats do this, it really is a distraction, because what they're doing is they're trying to distract from some other things that they should be working on. So to Greg Jarrett, Congressman Gaetz, Congressman Turner, thank you much for your expertise tonight, and thank you for joining.